Dan the man, what's going on?
All right, guys. So we will get started now. My name is, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Marks. I'm the manager of prospect information for the Milwaukee Bucks. Also the founder of Scouting and Scavenging, an initiative designed to encourage people working in professional sports to collect unused hotel toiletries for donation to homeless shelters and organizations in need throughout the country and in their local communities. So the reason I put together this panel tonight and invited these panelists in is because, I think everybody's worldview has probably changed in some way, shape, or form over the last few months because of coronavirus, the death of George Floyd. It's forced a lot of people to look in the mirror and, see what they can do better or how society can, grow together to kind of, just make the world a better place. And I think there's a lot of people who want to do things and want to do good, but maybe don't have an idea of how. So I wanted to bring people together who have taken initiative in their own communities and use their platform as sports figures to do so and highlight them and highlight the work that they've done in hopes of inspiring, in hopes of sharing the stories and the work that they're doing, because it's really impressive and important stuff. And also in hopes of inspiring other people to whether it's start their own organizations, become part of the change themselves, or maybe volunteer with some of the organizations we're going to highlight tonight. So I'll talk a little bit first about Scouting and Scavenging. It is an organization, an initiative I founded in January of this year. I had seen a tweet a number of years ago from a beat writer who collected unused hotel toiletries while covering the Yankees and donated them to a homeless shelter at the end of the season. And I thought it was a good idea, never really acted on it. And then this past January, I decided, I was going to do it for myself. I had some contacts that I've made over the last 7 years. So I was going to reach out to people in the G League, in the NBA, in college that I knew and try to have them participate. We had good participation. COVID obviously shut everything down. But within 2 months, at the end of the 2 months, I'm based in New Jersey, and we had been hit really hard by COVID, and especially Newark, New Jersey, a city where my grandparents are from, and I interned in City Hall there in 2012. And I've always felt a connection to the city, and they were really struggling. So I had people send me the supplies, and we donated them in conjunction with the Brick City Peace Collective to residents in Newark.
Assistant champion of the Bucks.
Over 2,100 toiletry kits.
Pro player.
We were able to donate throughout our initiative. And we partnered with Dawn Haynes, who is on this panel as well tonight. I'm going to introduce her in a second. But, one of the reasons I started this is to eliminate, waste. I think a lot of us take for granted, working in sports, that we get access to meals on the road when we're traveling, or hotel toiletries, or whatever the case may be. And, hotel toiletry for us, you go in and there's, bar of soap, shampoo, conditioner, you use maybe a squirt, and then it gets thrown out. And even if you don't use it, it probably gets thrown out because the cleaning people are under an obligation to assume it's been used for health purposes. So, I decided, let's try to eliminate waste and put these things to a good cause. And that's really why I started the initiative. And another reason is I think all of us that work in sports, we're very lucky. I get to watch basketball and talk about basketball for a living. Sometimes it can feel like you're not giving back, or you're not using your platform in a way that some people who, work on the front lines, or that work with kids, or, participate in things day to day to help people. Sometimes you can feel unfulfilled, even though you're working in what's for many a dream job. So to me, it's been a really fulfilling and rewarding experience. And I'm going to introduce Dawn Haynes. She is the director of the Brick City Peace Collective. They're an organization in New York, which is designed to prevent trauma and situations from escalating into violent encounters. So basically, intervention before things turn violent. And they were leaders in the country There was a lot of protests after the murder of George Floyd, and Newark is one of the only cities in the country that didn't see any riots or looting as a result of the protests. And Dawn played a significant part in making sure that happened. So, Dawn, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, peace and blessings, everyone. So the Brick City Peace Collective, while our now mayor was the councilman, he declared violence is a public health issue. And we have almost 11 years of organizations working very diligently with helping bring the crime down within our city of Newark. So now as Mayor Baraka has moved forward, it would only make sense for us to be under the same umbrella so that we can work diligently together to combat violence. We have a specific catchment area that we work in, and every organization do some amazing work, violence intervention. The motto is for us to reimagine what first responders look like. We take the approach in Newark where it's not so much as the police job to they have a job, and us as the community have a job. And our job in our community is to police our own and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to, because the police job is to arrest criminals, and our job is to prevent criminals from becoming criminals, prevent people from becoming criminals. All of our partners work in different capacities. So we have the Newark Police Department that is a part of our collective, the Public Safety Collaborative, the Newark Community Street Team, who does high risk intervention, and they're in the streets, like stopping people from shooting each other, like regularly. Like they have a very unique position that they're in, because they have to have a relationship with the police, and they have to have a relationship with the community, and their work speaks for itself. The Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, which this organization was created when crime was extremely high. Somebody made a phone call. Actually, Mayor Baraka made a phone call. He was the councilman at the time. And the call that he made drove everybody to a location where a young lady by the name of Nikisha Allen was shot and killed walking to the corner store. And from there, that organization did 155 rallies, whether it was rain, sleet, snow, whatever the weather was, to bring attention to the community that this is not okay, this is not what we're dealing with, and we're going to do better. And here's resources to help prevent these things from happening. We have Newark Community Solutions, which works inside of the court, where one of our magnificent Judge Pratt, she had an alternative way of being a judge, and it was phenomenal. They did write-ups on her as well, where everything didn't warrant you to go to jail. Some things made reflective moments where sit down and write a letter on what's going on, what happened, and how can we resolve this, whether it's with community service, whether it's with trauma. It really depended on what the case was, but that's where Newark Community Solutions come in at. The Newark Street Academy. So when our children oftentimes haven't seen graduating out of high school as their main priority, we have found a way to create a school that allow our students or our children to not only get a knowledge of self, but also earn their high school diploma and get paid a stipend. So these are the students that our traditional schools kind of lost. And we created an entire curriculum academics based on their need to still be educated, and these are some of the reasons why crime is down. We also have Newark Opportunity Youth Network, University Hospital, My Brother's Keeper, which is a national platform based on the Obama Foundation. And we also have the West Ward Victims Outreach, Brick Education, Equal Justice USA, who's responsible for us doing the consent decree, where we're actually writing policies and getting things changed on how our police use excessive force. We did a panel on that last night, which was extremely successful. The Hub, the Beth Israel Medical Center, and as well as the New Black Panther Party. So that is what Brick City Peace Collective does in a nutshell, under one umbrella, to eradicate the violence in our city. One person, one mind, one heart at a time.
Thanks so much, Dawn. And we've, she didn't mention what they do every Wednesday in the city of Newark. They have a grocery delivery program in partnership with HelloFresh and Table to Table, where they put together fresh meal kits for families in the community that don't have access to food and fresh food, or the resources to buy it. And we put the toiletry kits that we had collected into those fresh meal kits one of the Wednesdays. They do it every Wednesday in the city, and they'll be doing it until September 1st. And it's a really, really impressive program. I go every Wednesday to volunteer and help put the kits together. And we had over 15 college coaches from New Jersey attend our distribution day, and some of them, including Mitch Henderson at Princeton and Greg Horrenda at Fairleigh Dickinson, have been back multiple times to help out. So I'm just going to share. I'm going to do a screen share with everyone and share a video of our day in Newark and what we were able to do in partnership with the Brick City Peace Collective. And then we're going to start and we'll discuss and introduce our panelists, and we'll go one by one talking about each of their experiences and initiatives that they've worked on.
College basketball coaches were in Newark today, not for a clinic, but to hand out toiletries to those in need. The program is called Scouting and Scavenging. It's the brainchild of New Jersey native and Milwaukee Bucks executive Daniel Marks. Today he partnered with Brick City Peace Collective and Hello Fresh, plus the coaches of numerous New Jersey colleges and universities to pack up 2,100 individual toiletry kits for local residents at risk during this challenging time.
I travel a lot for work with the Milwaukee Bucks, and a lot of these toiletries, you use one squirt of shampoo and then the rest gets thrown out, or you don't use it at all, and when they change over the room, it gets thrown out. You know, these things are items that we take for granted when we travel for work, but these are items that are essential for people.
New Jersey, you know, the family here, and it just proves that in times of difficulty that we're willing to come together and help each other out. What I look at is I miss the camaraderie of doing something together with other people, but doing something important for the community. Everybody's getting together.
So many people are so fortunate, and I'm one of those people, and I'm just blessed to be able to have what I have, but to give back is so important.
I'm going to bring my team back, and they're going to see what a great organization this is and doing a lot of great for the community. So I'm all in when it comes time to doing great things for the state of New Jersey.
These items, soap, lotion, shampoo, toothpaste, were all assembled by the coaches on the road in hotel rooms. Instead of being thrown out, they were brought back and put to very good use.
All right,
Chuck and Natalie.
That's a great idea. Thanks so much for that.
So that kind of gives you an idea of what they're doing in Newark and what we're doing with Scouting and Scavenging. And for anyone who wants to get involved at your team or program, you know, ideally where we want to take this is that programs in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, across the country will participate, you know, have a box in the basketball office or football office when they get back from a road trip, you know, if there are road trips next year, put the stuff in a box, and then at the end partner with a local community organization that could use the supplies. So we're on Instagram at Scouting and Scavenging, and all of our updates are posted on there. So our first speaker tonight is a co-worker and colleague of mine, Milt Newton. He is the assistant general manager for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's been the assistant GM for the last 3 years, has played an integral part in turning the Bucks into a contending team, you know, in the acquisitions of Brooke Lopez, Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, the hiring of Mike Budenholzer. Before that, Milt was an executive, was the general manager of the Minnesota Timberwolves and an executive with the Washington Wizards and NBA League office. He won a national championship at the University of Kansas as a collegiate player. But I think what Milt will be talking about is what he feels most passionate about, his Emerald Gems Foundation, which is designed to grow the game of basketball through youth camps and coaching clinics in this native U.S. Virgin Islands. So, Milt, I'll turn it over to you with our first question. When did you first recognize the platform that you had as an athlete and an executive?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, and hello to fellow panelists. As far as the platform, like kids and grown-ups, they adore athletes, celebrities. For the most part, they try to live through them. in a sense. And so when you're in that position, you can reach a lot of people. You can reach people for betterment or for worse. And so for myself, having had that platform as a collegiate player and being a part of numerous NBA and other organizations that are around the people that are on that level, I saw it as a really good opportunity to spread a message. For me personally, as you mentioned earlier, I grew up in the Virgin Islands, left there when I was 14 years old. And when I was a kid, my idol was Dr. J. And if my mom wanted me to do something I didn't want to do, if she said like, well, Dr. J would have done this, then I would do it. So it was something that if Dr. J said do it, or it was good for me, I would do it. And kids, for the most part, are still like that. And that's where the platform comes in. When I go back to the Virgin Islands to conduct our yearly summer camps, it's amazing because a lot of these kids, they look up to me. And for the very fact that what I always tell them is like, when I see you, I see me, because when I was your age, I was doing the same thing. I was playing on the same basketball court, or I was in the same classroom, those type of things. But when they see me, they see someone that's like them, that was able to make it. Now, being with the Bucks and being with the Wizards and the Timberwolves, I try to get them to understand that basketball and a professional team is not just the guys running up and down the floor shooting baskets. There are so many other things that go and make up that organization, whether it's the accounting department, whether it's the sales department, whether it's there's so many different things that they could become. We were able to host 6 kids when I was with the Timberwolves about 4 years ago, all expenses paid. And we brought them to Minnesota, and it was a week-long educational excursion. Now, one of the things that we did while the kids were here is that we took them to the different departments that make up the Timberwolves, so that they can get a taste of what else goes on behind the scenes. And at the end of the week, one of the young ladies who was a very good basketball player, she wanted to become a trainer because she was able to spend some time in the training department, tape some ankles, talk to the head trainer about what they do and how it's done. And she didn't know that before, but at the end of the week, she said, I really like that. That's something I would like to pursue in college. And so using this platform to help expose our youth in the Virgin Islands to bigger and better things. There are some kids that live on the west end of the island that have never been to the east end of the island. And if you know anything about St. Thomas and the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas is 32 square miles. You can drive that in, 45 minutes to an hour in the States, but there are kids that have never been on either side of the island that they're from. And so what I try to explain to them is, like, the world is bigger than just this island. There's so many different things that you can do, so many different things that you can pursue. And going down to the islands every summer and taking NBA personnel with me gives them a chance to be around those players and personnel from the NBA, but also have those people talk to the kids about their experiences and wanting to be more, always striving to be more, whatever it is that they want to be, whether they want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, a teacher, what have you, the different things you got to have in place, like goal setting and following through on your goals. So those are the type of things that we try to expose all of our youth too, and letting them know, especially for me. I don't know, Danny, if you had mentioned it before, but the playground that I grew up on, that when my mom told me to be at home by 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then at 12 at night, she's coming to the playground with the whip in hand to get me to come home. 5 years ago, that playground was named after me. The park, the basketball court, everything, and it's something that I'm working on to renovate. But never in my wildest dream did I think or even thought that I would have a playground named after me. And so when the kids see that, and they can see that type of accolade for one of their own, I kind of took it upon myself and my wife, who is co-founder of Emerald Gems, to let them know that, like, you can accomplish anything that you want to be, and we're living proof. Because sometimes kids don't really think they can do it unless they see someone who is like them doing it. And so for me, I just kind of took that platform and used it in a way where I can encourage our youth in the Virgin Islands to achieve their goals and do bigger and better things.
And the Virgin Islands, I mean, the population is 106,000 as of the last census. So it's a really small population. What's the biggest challenge of growing the game, and the biggest opportunity of growing the game in such a small place?
Well, believe it or not, basketball is the sport that all the kids love to play. Obviously, there's soccer, but basketball is more well known. We have a really strong boxing tradition. We've had a couple world champions come out of there. Julian Jackson, Emil Griffith, guys like that who are world champions. But basketball is not the problem. It's getting the kids to play, as my college coach would say, getting the kids to play the right way. Kids there are very physical, very athletic, and they use the tools that they have. They play what I call a lot of bully ball. And so when we started going down there about 6 years ago and taking NBA personnel, the biggest thing for me was trying to get them to understand how to play the right way, how to handle the ball better, how to shoot the ball better with proper mechanics, because if you don't have proper mechanics, you will become as good a shooter as your mechanics allow you to be. And also, you have a lot of kids that are 6'3", 6'4", playing inside. And if they're fortunate enough to get a scholarship or play stateside, 6'3", you're going to be playing the two guard, you're going to be a point guard. And so trying to get them to understand, to develop their skills, especially for their size, that if they would get the opportunity to play in the States at a college or what have you, that they have skills that they can transfer. So like I said, it's not so much getting them to understand and love basketball. They love basketball. It's the number one sport. It's teaching them how to play the game correctly so that if they're fortunate enough to move on, they have the skills besides the running and the jumping. At some point, you're going to find someone who can run and jump higher than you. But if you have proper skills, I think you can go a long way. As what happened to me when I moved to the States, and I had a high school coach that was one of the best in the district, Washington, D.C., who taught me how to play and taught me how to shoot the ball and taught me how to dribble. And that took me to a scholarship at the University of Kansas. And so just teaching kids how to play the right way, that's one of our biggest things.
For me, I learned that people could run and jump a lot faster than I could at a very young age. But next question, this is something you're obviously very passionate about, but there's not a lot of people. I mean, Tim Duncan is the most notable, resident of the Virgin Islands in basketball. There's not a lot of people in the NBA that are from or have a connection to the Virgin Islands. How do you get people to care about and invest in the work that you're doing when they don't have that natural connection?
Well, I must say, there have actually been more players that have played in the NBA than people know about. Tim Duncan happens to be the most well-known, but we've had guys like Roger Bell and currently guys like Charles Claxton. They are from the Virgin Islands. And so, but for the most part, the one thing I was told 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when my wife and I started the foundation, is that you have to show consistency for people to buy in. There's been a lot of people that have started foundations and have done it for 1 year, 2 years, and then the foundation went away, or it didn't service the people that it was intended to service. But as you mentioned, a lot of times with our foundation, we either find ourselves dipping into our own pockets, but we have a handful of people who are committed to our foundation, who have helped us along the way. We look for different ways to involve more people. I think we have a website that is that really tells a lot about our website and a lot of the things that we have done. Currently, our website, our foundation services the kids of the Virgin Islands, and hopefully in the future we can kind of expand that to the entire Caribbean and hopefully in the stateside. But as you know, in the States, there are more resources than there are in the islands. And so that's why we are particularly concentrating on that area. So for now, we've done pretty good in regards to the things that we have wanted, that we want to do with our kids, with our youth. We are proud to say that everything that we have done, whether it's the 5 basketball camps in the summer that have averaged at least 100 kids per camp, or the kids that we have brought to Minnesota for a week long and put them up in the hotel rooms and took them to the university and took them to the black radio station and took them to the airlines that flew them up, or whether it's about the 150 basketballs that we just donated to all the public schools amongst the 3 islands. There has been no camper or no parent that has come out of their pocket for it, 1 single cent. So we're really proud about that. And the people that have helped us along the way, we're really fortunate to have them, but they have allowed us to do things like that without having to have anyone pay for money out of their pockets.
And in addition to bringing campers to Minnesota like you did a few years ago, with you based in the States and being the assistant general manager for the Bucks, how do you stay in touch with the campers and the coaches throughout the year that work your camp every summer? Yes,
we stay in touch with our campers or their parents, like via Facebook or Instagram. We get a lot of text messages and with the campers letting us know how they're doing, what they're doing. And we send out periodicals to the parents that have been involved with us, just letting them know what we're doing, what our intent is for the upcoming summer and those type of things. And so we have definitely stayed in touch in regards that way.
Well, Milt, thank you so much. Our next panelist that we're going to talk to is Cameron Lynch. Cameron was a standout football player at Syracuse University, had a 4-year NFL career with the Los Angeles and St. Louis Rams, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. With the Buccaneers, he was a 2-time Community MVP award winner for his work off the field. And he recently retired and started his own media company, Heartwork Media, with the goal of bringing value to others through human interest stories. And most recently, he was part of a coalition of Syracuse athletes that wrote a letter to the leaders on campus, encouraging them to address issues of systemic racism and how they affect the broader campus community in new and innovative ways. So Cam, we're very lucky to have you. And the first question for you, when you were with the Buccaneers, you were part of a coalition of players and police officers and community members in the Tampa Bay community. What was your biggest takeaways from being part of that coalition, and how did that coalition shape your views on what's going on in the country today?
Yeah, Daniel, thank you for having me on. Milt, thank you for your story. I would love to connect with you outside of this. That was beautiful, my man. Bring some football into basketball. But getting to your question, Daniel, it was great. That coalition piece was great with the Buccaneers, and to be relevant, to kind of speak about what's going on now. Deshaun Jackson actually led those initiatives. So Deshaun has been big in the community, and he allowed me and other athletes to come there and speak to the police force out here in Tampa. So we got to see how they stop people, right? And it was pretty nerve-wracking, to be honest, to see the perspective of the police and to actually be the person sitting in the car, right, or walking up with the police ourselves. And the police would give us different simulations and whatnot of what people would do. So that was really cool. And like I said, going back to the Deshaun Jackson thing, my marketing director, Whitney Holtzman, who's on this call as well, she's of the Jewish faith, and I want to make sure that I spoke to her about what was going on. I do go hard when it comes to Black Lives, and I've been protesting with my mask on. I have been a part of the coalition for Syracuse as well. And, I played with Deshaun Jackson while he was here. And I wanted to touch on that issue for a little bit. I think Emmanuel Acho explained that really well. I don't know if anyone here has seen his breakdown of what went down. But really, I think, Emmanuel saying ignorance isn't an option these days, right? Especially now what's going on. So I think it's important that we eradicate these prejudices, we eradicate these social injustices that are going on, and conversate about it, over-communicate about it. Whitney and I talk a lot about over-communicating issues. And I just saw something about Julian Edelman. He went on and he explained his background, and he's a Jewish man. And he basically told Deshaun, he's like, hey, we have to educate ourselves. We have to make sure that we're loving each other and also listening to the dialogue. So there's a lot of conversation to be had on a lot of ends and a lot of ways. But, hopefully I can use my network and the people that I do know to help create the change.
No, that's awesome. And I think it is, that the conversations do need to be had, writing people off. And, I'm Jewish as well. And those comments were highly, highly offensive. But, hopefully this can lead to a conversation to create greater understanding between the African-American and the Jewish community and communities all over. And so my second question for you, Cam, is you were a two-time winner of the Community MVP Award. And, a lot of people say, oh, how do you balance your obligations to the team on the field versus your interests and initiative off the field?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel, like you said, it's important that, while we travel, we eat the lobsters and the steaks, right? We're not currently in the bubble right now, but, when it comes to traveling as athletes, we get the best of the best. And Mr. Milt, I know is, like, I went to Syracuse University, right? Michael Carter Williams is one of my guys. He played for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I've been up there and visited some of his games. I know we bring a lot to the table, but I do know that on my off days, I make sure that I went to go do community service. And so 2015 for the Rams, I became a community MVP. I wrote that right on my resume. And to be honest, Daniel, when it comes to the stats and everything, that's something we can't write on our resume. 15 tackles in a game, it's cool, but I can't write it on my resume. But that community MVP, best believe it's on there twice. And so what was really cool about the Buccaneers, they gave us a nice championship belt for that week, for the services that we do. And I made sure on all my off days, even the day we found out if we made the team or not, right? I had a chance to be on Hard Knocks. And we found out whether we were on the team or not. But that day, I made sure to wake up and go to this military location where there's wounded warriors and basically people who suffered injuries in the military. It's a place for them to get back on their feet, get confident, hop in a wheelchair and exercise. So that same day, Coach Dirk Cutter, he's calling my phone like, Cam, if you don't answer the phone, I'm going to cut you. I just made sure that you're on the team, right? I'm the head coach, but if you don't answer the phone, I'm going to cut you. But I was like, hey, Coach, my apologies. I was out giving to the community, and I sent him a screenshot where I was. But, I made sure during the time that I was playing that I gave back to the community because we lived the high life. We're walking around, 5-star hotels and all this and that. And then, you know, some people beside you can't even afford to pay their light bills, right? So I made sure on my off days, I took the time to give back to the community.
That's awesome. And now recently you've become part of that coalition of Syracuse alumni to write a letter to the university asking them to address issues of systemic racism on campus. And the group spans 6 decades of Syracuse football players. How did this group come together? And what were some of the most impactful conversations you had with former and current athletes at Syracuse?
Wow, it was great. I mean, really, we got some emails together. It started off with that. So anybody here in this chat, if your school hasn't made a statement yet, or you feel like you want to pitch into kind of the social injustices, right? I'm gonna go back to the thing that Deshaun said. There's conversation, and Julian Edelman, there's conversations, those locker room conversations that the world needs to have. So if you feel like you need to go back to your school and reach back and say, hey, I want to be able to discuss how I'm feeling. I am a Jewish person of the Jewish faith, and I need to go and discuss this. Hop in these chats. And so what we did was we got a whole bunch of emails together, and we said, hey, we want to make a statement. Please sign off if, on this Google survey, if you want to make a statement as well. So I use my energy, and like, it's really like herding cattle. People who haven't dealt with athletes here, it's a lot to herd people and grown men and grown women to focus on one thing. So really, we got together and we said, hey, we got some lawyers on board, and we said, hey guys, we want to say this thing, and they wrote it up really nice, and we gave them the thumbs up. And our conversations with our athletic director on Monday, and they hired a D&I officer, director of diversity and inclusion. And so we got that change to be made. And just going back, right? Like I said, I've been protesting, I've been on these coalition boards, but this change has probably been one of the most proud moments that I've done in the community, to be honest, because I mean, we banded together, we galvanized as a group, and now we're speaking with one voice, and we got change immediately. And it's something that I'm really proud of, and I'm looking forward to changing the culture, right? A lot of times athletes, especially football players, and I was an engineer major, right? A lot of guys that play football or play sport, we get pushed into these small academic rooms where it's like, okay, hey, just, make sure you go to class so you can pass, right? But making sure that the guys who do want to become engineers or, whatever it is, make sure they have the resources to get that done, especially the minority athletes, the Black athletes.
And Cam, one thing that comes up, with a lot of college athletes and even some professional athletes is fear of speaking out or voicing their opinion on an issue. Okay, maybe my coach isn't going to like what I have to say. Could my scholarship be revoked? I don't necessarily want to be active in this because what could the repercussions be? How do you, when you're talking to athletes who want to get involved or become active at Syracuse or just in general in their communities, how do you tell them to approach it? And did you ever have a situation at Syracuse or in your professional career where you were afraid to speak out on something because you could get cut or it could be consequences?
Most definitely. That's a tough question because, right, the first time I took a knee during the anthem, and I didn't do it when Colin Kaepernick did it. I didn't do it when Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans from my Tampa Bay Buccaneers did it, right? Because they were getting death threats, and these guys make $1 million, right? Probably every month. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm undrafted. So a lot of times somebody told me, a scout told me this: if you produce as a player, then they can tolerate. P equals T. Production equals toleration, right? And if you're Mike Evans or Deshaun Jackson, you're taking a knee, and we might not like it, but hey, you're scoring touchdowns for us, so we're going to tolerate that. But for me, I was afraid to do it, to be honest. And when everything was going down, I didn't put my hand over my heart. I just stood in solidarity, put my hand on my teammate's shoulder, but it was super tough. And the first time I took a knee and I decided to speak up was when I saw my sister do it during her graduation. And for me, it brought tears to my eyes because I was like, man, I was afraid this whole time. I was afraid to speak out for what's right. And a lot of times the advice that I give these young athletes who are on the Syracuse campus, I'm like, hey, you need the backing from your coaches because you have to make sure, and the reason why you need the backing is because a lot of times the coaches have the power, right? The coach would be like, hey, I'm not going to play him. He took a knee, or, he stood up for his rights. And so what I tell them is, we have your back, right? And we haven't had our the guys that are at Syracuse, we haven't had their back. We haven't had the students back this whole time, really. And now we're figuring out, like, as a community, we need to figure out how to put our arms around them and let them know, like, hey, if you're not getting support from your coaches, hey, we got your back in this and that. And when I say got your back, as in, if something does happen to you, here are resources when you leave here for work opportunities or for X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So I think just making sure that they have support to do and speak freely as they move on in their careers.
Thanks, Cam. I really appreciate your insight. And one thing that I think as a manager at Vanderbilt University for the basketball team, I saw a lot, and you mentioned, there's a tendency to kind of shepherd athletes into certain majors because those are the ones where it's easy enough for them to stay eligible. And you might have a guy who's interested in engineering, but coach is like, oh, labs on Tuesday is going to interfere with practice. So then that kind of subtle pressure. And I think it's so important, the ball stops bouncing at some point. For some players, it's right after college. For some, you get some professional career. But that is one thing I think that as these topics are being discussed is, encouraging athletes to think beyond just the majors that might be suggested for them, like choose their own path and what they want to do, because at the end of the day, they're going to be living with the consequences of that decision. And the athletic director or the academic counselor is, not going to be living with the consequences of what they studied and how they prepare themselves.
Most definitely. I mean, playing sport during college is a full-time job. And those hard skills and technical skills, if you don't develop those while you're in college, if you don't have those internships, when you get out, you'll be behind the 8 ball. And so for me now, I'm working to get my MBA. And so to be honest, to build those technical skills. And man, I know that as athletes, we have to have the pin last, because at the same time, when you do go to practice and you do play those games in college, man, I mean, like I said, if you don't have technical skills, you're going to struggle. If you don't network with those kids in school, you will struggle. I mean, going to Syracuse, Michael Jordan's daughter went there. I mean, there's people to connect with. There's people outside of just the sport, outside of what we're doing, that can move you along in your career. So my advice to these young people going into college, if there's a college season, right, to prepare yourself, because life after ball will happen, and it will happen fast.
Thanks so much, Cam. And I want to introduce our next speaker. He's a close friend of mine who I've known for the last 5 years, Daniel Poneman. In 2009, Daniel founded the Swag Air Showcase, which was a showcase designed to give unsigned college basketball or high school basketball players in the Chicago area exposure to potentially get college scholarships. And he started that when he was a senior himself in high school. He's gone on to have a media career. He produced a documentary, A Shot in the Dark, about Chicago's Orr High School, which was nominated for a television Emmy. Sports documentary. He had a recruiting service for college coaches, and most recently is the founder of co-founder of Beyond Athlete Management, an NBA and NFL agency. So Dan has as wide and varied of a background as you will find in professional sports, but I think through his work with the now known as the Undiscovered Showcase, which has helped over 400 kids from the Chicago area get college scholarships, that would be kind of what he takes the most pride in and what he's been able to accomplish over the last 11 years. So Dan, my first question to you is, you started this as a high school senior. How did you organize an event to get exposure for other high school seniors when you were their age?
Thanks, Danny. Well, before I jump in, thanks for having me. I'm really psyched to be here. It's funny, I'm here obviously to speak on the panel, but I got my little notepad. I've been taking a bunch of notes. I just wrote down P = T. If you produce, they will tolerate. I love that. I'm going to share that with my clients. But yeah, psyched to be here with these amazing people. So to answer your question, a little bit about my backstory. So I grew up in Chicago, played ball, wasn't very good. I mean, I was a fine player. But when I was in high school, like very early days of social media, I started a recruiting website. So I knew a lot of the top players in the area. I had played against them in AAU, or maybe I played on teams or in leagues with them. So I started ranking players. So I started when I was a freshman in high school. I started a website that ranked other high school basketball players. So by the time I was a senior in high school, I knew everything about every, player in the city and state. My website was pretty popular, and I knew a ton of college coaches because my website, this was pre-Twitter, pre-Instagram, pre-YouTube. My website was a go-to resource for college coaches who needed information about recruits. So I kind of had this idea. I saw, at the end of each year, there would be all these seniors that didn't have colleges to go to that, maybe I had scouted, I knew were good enough, but weren't on the radar of big-time colleges. So I decided initially to do it not as a nonprofit initiative, but I was a high school senior myself. I wanted to make some extra cash. So I decided to run an unsigned senior showcase. So I would charge $75 for every kid and $50 for every college coach that came as a way to, match college coaches with players. And now these weren't Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina. This was, the local community colleges, the local NAIAs or D3s, the basically picking up the players at the end of their senior year who didn't have schools. So I ran it the first year and I lost $1,000. Because what I found was most of the kids who didn't have a college to go to the spring of their senior year didn't have the money to go to college and didn't have $75 to play in a showcase. So I started letting all these kids play for free. And then soon after that, I kind of light bulb went off. I said, well, if I turn it into a nonprofit and I start raising the money, I can let all these kids play for free. I can let all these college coaches come, and I can make matches between high school players and college coaches and really help change people's lives. The whole event cost at the time maybe $10,000 to run. And if I got 5 kids scholarships, that's worth $1 million. So from there, kind of took off. And this past year, it was our 10th annual. We had 270 players, all high school seniors from the Chicagoland area and junior college sophomores. We had 130 college coaches, and we sent, I think, 52 kids to school through that event. So it's kind of grown from there. It was just kind of started off as a for-profit initiative, and then, life happened and it became a nonprofit.
And speak a little bit more about that, because people will be surprised to know that you yourself didn't go to college. You were running your own business as a high school senior. So how did it come, when you're selling parents and players initially on attending this event to get a college scholarship and you're not actually planning on going to college yourself, how did you kind of sell that vision to people?
Excellent question. Not the first time I've been asked that. Yeah, because I started my business when I was in high school. By the time I was finished with high school, I was 17 years old. I got all these college coaches calling my phone. I got this popular website, and I'm like, I was going to go to Northwestern to be a team manager. I was like, Mom, Dad, I don't want to go to college. I'm a basketball scout. I'm going to be a basketball scout. Like, this is what I'm going to do. And they supported it. Luckily, I had, supportive parents, but, that was my path, but it was a very unique path. I got very lucky that I kind of fell into something I loved at an early age. I got lucky that social media started rolling out while I was in high school. Facebook dropped freshman year. Twitter dropped senior year. So I was kind of able to ride that early social media wave to create a business for myself before the market got saturated. But it's not like I'm like, oh, I didn't go to college, so you shouldn't either. Like, I got lucky. I had a kind of path laid out for me that I was able to, run with. And again, not that it was an easy path either, but I mean, basketball provides so many incredible opportunities for kids who wouldn't otherwise get to go to college. In our city alone, a lot of the kids who go to our showcase, if they don't get a scholarship that day, they're not going to school at all. The waiting list to get into Chicago City colleges is like 2+ years for a lot of these kids. So if you don't have the money, you don't have incredible grades, what are your options? A lot of times you apply for City College, you wait on the waiting list, or you get a scholarship. I don't think it takes much convincing from my end to, say, oh, well, I didn't go to college, so but you should. I think it's, if these kids get these offers, it's a no-brainer most of the time.
Yeah. Is there any success story from the showcase that you're most proud of? And then following up, have any other cities started showcases like this, kind of following your lead and bringing local college coaches together with unsigned seniors?
Yeah, for sure. So, again, our showcase, again, is not about like creating pros, right? If your senior year is ended and you don't have a single scholarship offer, chances are you're not going to be an NBA player, right? You're trying to get a scholarship to an NAI, a JUCO, a D2, a D3 to do something else. So our success stories, our showcase, we don't have any like, this guy made it to the league stories, but we have a lot of this guy succeeded in X, Y, Z other way. I'll share two stories, success stories that come to mind. So it's funny. I see I saw in the group earlier, Ryan Marks is here. So Ryan's a college coach, and he's a part of one of our success stories from our early days. So our very first showcase, there's a kid named DeMarco Nash, went to Lincoln Park High School, played. He's an undersized guard. Ended up playing for Coach Marks at the time it was called, now it's UTRGV, but at the time it was University of Texas Pan Am. So DeMarco went and played for Coach Marks, ended up transferring to Robert Morris, an NAI in Chicago, and came back 6 years later after playing on our first showcase. He came back as a college coach to recruit more kids. So that's the ultimate success story for us. If you can come to our event, get a scholarship, graduate, and then become a college coach, a high school coach, a teacher, a trainer, some way that you can use basketball to get out of the city, get an education, and come back and reinvest what you've learned into the city. I call that quantum impact. All right, if I can help you, I can help one person get that scholarship, and then you can take what you learn and come back and help 1,000 more kids. Now we're doing something big. So when I see someone like DeMarco playing our event, now he's a college coach and he's going to change thousands of lives in his time. That's what it's all about. Another cool story from a recent showcase, my partner Jelani Floyd at Beyond Athlete Management was at like a LA Fitness playing pickup, and there was like a 6'6" kid, and he asked him, "Hey, where do you go to school? Where do you play?" And he said, "Well, I go to Fenwick High School, but I'm academically ineligible. I don't play for the team there." He's a senior. He's 6'6". He's athletic. So Jelani invited this kid to the showcase. He ended up getting a scholarship to a Division III junior college, like the lowest level of college basketball. That most people don't even know there's 3 divisions in JUCO. But the kid grinded it out. He went from JUCO to a Division III school, and he's about to get his degree. Or he might have already gotten it, I guess last month. A kid named Nana. So I mean that's what it's all about. But on the flip side, there have been some negative stories. A kid who played in our first showcase, one of my close friends, Greg Tucker, went through the showcase, got a JUCO scholarship, ended up playing at Chicago State, and he was shot and killed 4 years ago. So a lot of times just getting that scholarship and getting out doesn't ensure success. It's Chicago's a tough place for a lot of these kids, and that's why I guess what we're doing is important.
And have any other cities adopted this, or have you seen anything like this?
Sort of. Like an unsigned senior showcase isn't like an original concept. Like I didn't invent the concept of an unsigned senior showcase. I think what we did was put a twist on it where we could let the kids play for free and not do it as a for-profit event. I don't know any other cities that are doing it in a nonprofit way. I've talked to various NBA players in different cities who want to be kind of a flagship athlete in their city to bring this concept there. We've actually brought it to different countries. Milt, we got to talk offline about what you do, because I was down in Trinidad and Tobago, 4 years ago. We did a camp down there. We got 6 kids scholarships. So we brought it to different countries, but honestly, I haven't seen any other cities adopt this exact same concept.
And in recent years, Evan Turner, an NBA player, and Jewel Lloyd on the WNBA side have invested resources and put their names behind the showcase. How big was that to get that recognition from professional athletes in terms of growing the brand? And what have been the biggest changes overall to the event from when you first started to where it's at now?
Yeah, well, the Evan Turner thing was cool. So I told you, I started my recruiting site when I was a freshman in high school. I went to Evanston High School, north side of Chicago, north suburbs. Evan Turner was a junior at the time at St. Joe's. He was like the number 2 ranked player in the state on my website. So he was like my hero. Like I looked up to this guy. He was like the coolest person I knew. And, I created that connection back in, 06 or whatever. When we were in high school, kept in touch a little bit. And years later, Evan reached out to me on Twitter, just sent me a message, hadn't heard from him in years, said, "Dan, I see what you're doing with the showcase. I want to get involved. How can I support?" And, as has been reported, on many, across basketball, Evan got a big contract, $72 million. We were a small little nonprofit that were just trying to, scrape funds together by raising from friends and family. So Evan, lending his financial support, and the NBPA matching that donation every year. A lot of people don't know when players donate to organizations like this, the Players Association actually matches that donation. So bringing Evan in not only brought in his donation, but doubled that donation by him being an NBA player. So that gave us all the funds we needed to really blow this thing out and not have to, cut corners when providing an experience for these kids. and also brings, it gives these kids something special. Like the kids that play in our event are not the kids who play in the EYBL and the Adidas and Under Armour circuit. These are the kids who might not have ever left Chicago. So to, hear from an NBA player, wear his jersey, play in his event, you'll get a special message from him. It makes them feel like they're a part of something. Like these kids who play on the EYBL circuit, they get all the shoes, all the gear, all the trips, and a lot of other kids who are very talented and deserve that don't get that same experience. So I think adding that, Evan and Jewel, elite players in their field really kind of just added another dimension to it. So it was really cool for Evan to come full circle and lend his support. And, we're hoping, like I said, that more NBA players in different cities will want to adopt this concept and bring the same.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Dan, and continue the great work. I want to introduce our next speaker. This is a guy that I feel very lucky to have on this panel tonight. He has been an inspiration for a number of people across the country. Eric LeGrand, 3-year football player for Rutgers University. Like me, he is a New Jersey native. In October of 2010, so almost 10 years ago, Eric was paralyzed during a football game in New Jersey. And since that time, he has dedicated his life to rehabbing and to helping others through funding spinal cord research and raising awareness for these issues through his Team LeGrand Foundation, which is a part of the broader Christopher Reeve Foundation for Spinal Cord Research. Eric has been recognized with the Jimmy V Award for Courage, the WWE Warrior Award, was named the most influential person in New Jersey sports one year. His number 52 has been retired by Rutgers University under the condition that when Eric can walk again, which he will do, the jersey will be unretired and given to another player. And Eric has also written a book, served as a motivational speaker, and worked on Rutgers football broadcasting, radio broadcasting. So Eric, thank you so much for being here. One thing that stands out to me about yourself is you have gone through things in your life that would put a damper on and dampen the spirit of many lesser people. But your positivity throughout this 10-year ordeal for yourself has really stood out. How have you been able to maintain that mindset every day for the past 10 years? And how has that mindset enabled you to do the work that you've done as an advocate for spinal cord research?
Honestly, it's the people that are surrounded around me. My mom from the very beginning said, whoever comes in my room has to have a positive outlook. And after my injury, you don't really know what's going on, where your life is taking you. But so many people are coming in my room saying, Eric, you're going to be fine. You're going to get through this. You're going to get through rehab. Going to get you back on your feet walking again. You start hearing that over and over and over. And I'm saying to myself, all right, as an athlete, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be fine. Whatever I have to do, put it in front of me. I'll handle that adversity. My aunt, when I would, maybe get down a little bit, my aunt would always pray for me and read over some scriptures that always motivated me. And then my sister would read the fan mail that people were sending me at the time. It was a pretty crazy story because my injury happened on national TV. Of course, we were playing up at MetLife Stadium. The stadium had just opened up where the New York Giants and the New York Jets play. And it was in front of thousands of people, but also the people that were watching on TV. So many people wanted to reach out and say, how's that football player, from Rutgers doing? A lot of people didn't know my name, Eric LeGrand. They knew me as the Rutgers football player. And they wanted to always know how I was doing it. It kind of turned into me as a responsibility. So many people were going out of their way, wishing me well, praying for me, coming to see me, waiting hours upon hours to see me. And I'm sitting here like, you know what? How can I let all these people down? They got my back. They're behind my back. My family, my friends, my teammates, and all these new random people, I had no idea who they were. They started to come up and cheer me up. A crazy story because I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan, all right? So this is a kind of funny story. Andy Reid, who's now the Kansas City Chiefs coach, came up when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, came up to visit me in the hospital twice. Came up to see me twice, and this is right during the season. It was pretty awesome. But before every game that year for the rest of the season, he would text me the first play for every game. And I'm sitting there like, I got Andy Reid texting me the first play of this game. There's all these people sending me videos and wishing me well. I can't let them down. I'm 20 years old. God willing, I have a whole blessed life ahead of me. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be upset. What you see is what you get with me. I've always been that happy-go-lucky person. Want to, cheer everyone up, be that light in the room. That's me. And when this injury happened to me, I said, I don't want to let this define me. I'm not going to let this change who I am. I'm going to learn how to grow from it. And that's what I continue to do each and every day. You start to realize that's the positivity you put in this world, and you start living your life this way. People want to be around you. That positive radiation it goes around, and people, they're in the beginning, when you first meet somebody new, they might feel bad for you. But once you start having a conversation with me, I promise you won't walk away feeling bad at all.
That's awesome. And I consider myself someone inspired by what you've done. And now you've kind of branched out into so many different things. You have a merchandise line, you have your annual Walk to Believe fundraiser, motivational speaking. What part of your work with the Reeve Foundation and Team LeGrand has been the most gratifying for you as you've kind of evolved?
So to give a little background, Team LeGrand and the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation I formed in 2013. And it's funny because in the very beginning of my injury, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation had reached out to me, just giving me support, whatever I needed. They were there for, educating on spinal cord injuries, a phone call for people that had been through this already. They were always there for me. So around 2012, so many people started to reach out to me and say, hey, how can we give back? What can we do to help? What can we do to help your cause? What do So my mom and I had the conversation, so maybe it's time to start a foundation. And I remember my mom coming up to me, she goes, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, they've been there since day one with you, how about we have a conversation with them? And I said to her, my mom, I've been hearing a lot about this foundation and everything, but who is Christopher Reeve? And my mom's jaw dropped. She goes, you don't know who Christopher Reeve is? I'm like, am I supposed to? She goes, the original Superman in the 70s and 80s, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, Mom, I was born in 1990, right? And after I did my research on him and everything, I was like, wow, yeah, maybe we should, go into this a little bit more because of what he stood for and everything that he did for spinal cord injury research. It's kind of like when he died in 2005, it was like a shadow kind of went over spinal cord injury research. And then when I got hurt in 2010 in front of thousands of people, I feel like the torch has been passed over to me. And it's my job now to find a cure for paralysis and live his dream and find a world of empty wheelchairs. But I would say, I've raised close to $2 million now with Team LeGrand, done this event and done that event. I say the biggest thing that I'm so proud of was this year. This was supposed to be our 10th annual Walk to Believe. That was going to happen. It was going to be a big show. Usually I do it in the morning. Everyone gets out there. We have a barbecue, DJ playing. It's a great time. Families come out, have a great time. I was going to do it in the evening, like a glow stick, night run and walk, everything. We're going to have a live band, fireworks, make it special for the 10th year. Well, COVID-19 happened. And I remember being down. I'm like, we're not going to be able to have this event. We got to cancel it. And I'm not going to lie to you, for about a week or two, I was down in the dumps like, dang, I'm like, this can't happen year 6, year 7, year 8. It has to happen on year 10. But I got back with my team of grant people in the Reeve Foundation. They said, Eric, how about we do this virtually? I'm like, I've always wanted to do it virtually, but how does that actually work? Then you start going through the logistics on how you can do it and whatnot. And we came up with the idea, 52 for 52. And as Milton he's down from the U.S. Virgin Islands, we got them involved. So we wanted to do the 50 states and the two U.S. territories, using the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And we wanted to bring that together to say 52 for 52, get one participant from each state. And I remember we were about I was like, do you think we could do this? We're about 3 weeks out from there. And they're like, let's just try it. And I said, all right, we're going to do this virtually now. I never did it. And now you want me to get a participant from every one of these states and try to do it. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put it on my social media. Let's see what happens. And wow, a week and a half later, we had that entire map filled out. Everyone participating in Alaska, Hawaii, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, D.C., Maryland. I'm like, this is incredible. Absolutely incredible. So many people came together and they kind of accepted the challenge. Everyone was reaching out to me. I know somebody in Montana. I know somebody I know. I got Rhode Island covered, things like that. Brought the community together. And to see what everything that's going on in the world today, with the social injustice, the leadership from up top, just everything that's going on. That event brought so many people together, Black, white, Spanish, Asian, whatever you were. We got to send people from all over the world. We raised the most money we ever had, over $190,000. Participation from all 50 states and 2 U.S. territories and 10 different countries. And I'm sitting back here like, wow, I thought this was going to, be a terrible year because we weren't able to do it live in person. And we turned it into a virtual event. And it ended up being the best one we've ever had. And we had the best, most money raised and the most people participated. And it just shows what you can do when you come together as a community. So that's what I'm most proud of.
That's awesome. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize is, obviously COVID has devastated this country, the world in a lot of different ways, economically, financially, health-wise, different communities. But for people with spinal cord injuries, the coronavirus can be deadly. So what have these past few months been like for you? And how have you and the foundation kind of been a resource to other people with spinal cord injuries on how to navigate these tumultuous times?
I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people think when somebody is in a wheelchair or a spinal cord injury, they're just sitting there and that's it. They have no idea about the secondary complications that go on. The decreased lung capacity that I had, the muscle atrophy not being as big and strong like I was as a football player, being able to, my immune system is, strong enough to be able to handle something like this. I've had pneumonia probably 4 times now in my life with this injury. And imagine what they're saying what coronavirus can do. So I had to get into my mental toughness stage knowing that, you know what, Eric? You're not going to be able to see your friends and the family as much as you want to over these next few months or so, because if you go out there and you could, contract this virus, it could be fatal to you. And that's there's 5.6 million people that are dealing with some sort of paralysis. They had to think of the same thing, like, you know what? My life is about to change a lot. I don't know what I'm going to do because if I could, contract the virus, I have one of those complications. That's a part of me. And, education-wise, the Breathe Foundation has set up so many different guidelines on their website and what to do, how to watch out for, trying, to wash your hands, keep the mask on, all those precautions. But the main thing is you have to worry about the nursing staff that's coming in. I had to reduce my nurses. That I had 2 nurses. Now I only have 1 because one of my nurses goes to all these different places and all these different, nursing homes and everything that was happening with that. My aides had to cut down from doing one of their other jobs because they didn't want to go to different facilities. There's just so much that goes into it with a spinal cord injury. But thank God we've been able to stay healthy. I've been able to see my family, which has been awesome. They've been smart through this whole thing. They've been able to, stay inside their house and not be around too many people. I've seen a few friends here and there, but thank God also for technology because without that, it'd be rough. But yes, there's a lot of things that go on with spinal cord injuries when it comes to COVID-19, and I just had to, mentally wise, gear myself up, but it's opened up so many different opportunities and projects that I'm working on that I've been sitting over here, thinking of. So I'm excited for when we do finally find that vaccine, the treatments, or, the cure, whatever it is, and get back to life in 2021 and ready to hit the ground running fast.
Now, the last question, and then we'll go to our next panelist, but with the success that you've had virtually with the Walk to Believe and, getting a record number of donations this year in the midst of an economic downturn, not since the Great Depression, like what kind of lessons has, doing philanthropy and your work through your foundation, what kind of lessons have you learned about how to go forward from this time in terms of it's hard not to see a lot of negativity in the world right now, but for the stuff that you're doing, I'm sure, like you said, it's opened up new avenues and new ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about if things were kind of normal.
Yeah, virtually has opened it up to have conversations like everyone's having conversations now about racism like we need to have, how just everything that's going on COVID-19, we're having conversations. Same thing with this virtually now. There have been so many people that participate in this event that in the beginning, they might not have known my story, but they knew somebody else. Oh yeah, I have a cousin who is in a wheelchair. I'm going to walk for him. Or I know a coworker that's been injured. I'm going to go out there and run for them. This platform of being able to go virtually and open up to all 52 states has opened up so much more conversation and people wanting to give donations and want to do something because they know at the end of the day, they're doing something for somebody who, that's near and dear to them, but they can't do it themselves. And they get the motivation and inspiration to say, you know what, with all the bad and the negativity that's going on in this world, here's an opportunity where we can bring people together. And that's what I love to do. And everything that's going on and when everything's in such disarray, find a way to get through that adversity, take it face on and handle it. Find a way to make it that, even though this happened, there's still a way to find the good and the better of everything. And now going forward, we'll have it live. Of course, we're still going to have it live. I want to have that party like we do down at Rutgers where everybody's just amazing to see. But we are going to open it up virtual, and who knows what challenges I might have next year. Trying to get participation from all 7 continents, how many different countries. But this has been truly amazing and definitely a lesson learned to say, you know what? Our support is not only here in New Jersey, New York, the metro, the tri-state area. It's worldwide. And we make a difference for people. Help them we can give them hope and know that somebody is fighting for them. And one day we will find that cure.
And I do have one more question for you. You said you got a ton of letters and Andy Reid was reaching out with the first play of the game. Is there any message that you got during that initial wave of support that stood out to you, that you still remember to this day?
Yep. It was, my sister actually read it to me. It was actually just from a kid that I grew up with right in my hometown, this kid named Steve Moore. I'll never forget him writing saying, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Everything that, that you always been in my life, you've always been that light. You've always helped everyone that you always knew. Everyone in this town has always looked up to you. Maybe not everyone may have told you this, but this town looked up to you. You are our hero. You were always there for us, and we were always there for you. And you're going to get through this, and you're going to fight through this, and you're going to become the person that you've always wanted to be. And we're all going to be following in your footsteps on the example that you lead, that you live in, how you live in this area. And that brought me to tears because that's someone from my hometown who I grew up with that. I had no idea how they actually felt about me. I always had a bunch of friends, and like I said, I was always that guy. But to put that in writing and hear those words brought me to tears, and I just knew. I'm like, you know what? I got my town, everyone behind my back. I'm able to get through this.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Eric, and sharing your story and your work, and really been an inspiration to me personally, and I know countless others throughout the state and now on a wider level. So I'll introduce our last panelist now, Alicia Jessop. She is an assistant professor at Pepperdine University, where she teaches courses on sports law and sports marketing, and also serves as the academic director for the Institute of Entertainment, Media, Sports, and Culture. She's a writer for The Athletic and The Washington Post. She had her own sports business website, rulingsports.com, and holds a law degree. She has also advised various professional athletes in their foundation, how to manage their foundation and create a foundation, and has worked with the National Basketball Players Association and the Alliance of American Football on post-career planning for players. So Alicia, thanks for joining us. My first question for you is, you've helped and advised a number of athletes on creating their own foundations. What are some of the biggest hurdles to establishing a successful foundation that helps achieve the athlete's desired goals? And how do you help turn an idea into a plan of action?
Awesome. You all are incredible. And you put me behind the toughest act to follow. So hopefully I keep everybody's attention. And Eric, I am a Broncos fan too. I'm not sure if you're still a Broncos fan after Andy Reid, but maybe we'll win 8 games this year.
No, don't worry. We're gonna win more than 8 games. We just reloaded into that draft, and Andy Reid got something coming for him. We joke around about that.
we're in trouble through 2030 because of Patrick Mahomes. Thank you for having me. So the question is, how do you help an athlete's nonprofit become successful? And I think the gentlemen on this Zoom have given you a good foundation to that. The biggest problem I see with athlete foundations is not a lack of heart. I used to teach at the University of Miami. At this point in my career, I have, I believe, 13 former students who are in the NFL or the NBA. And when they would sit after class and talk to me about what they wanted to do with their lives, it really wasn't about making money. It was about helping people around them. And the NFL was the tool for them to accomplish that. So the problem isn't a lack of heart. The issue and hurdle that athletes get trapped in, to be quite frank, when it comes to creating nonprofits is the law. We have really strict and intense laws here in the United States that even lawyers have a difficult time navigating. So annually, ESPN produces an article of all of the athletes in America who are in violation of nonprofit law with their nonprofits. And I think if you talk to a lot, they only cover male athletes, but if you talk to a lot of these men, they have zero clue that their nonprofit that they're operating is illegal, and there's massive consequences to this. So the biggest thing I would advise anyone interested in creating a nonprofit to do is either educate yourself on the legal principles, or probably a better idea is seek out the counsel of a lawyer. I was on the phone this morning with the executive director of a pretty well-known sport foundation run by a Hall of Fame basketball player. And this woman is an attorney, and she's like, Alicia, the filings for these nonprofits, they're tough. They're tough for me, and I've been an attorney for 2 decades. So I think that's the biggest thing. The other thing, which I believe all the gentlemen thus far have spoke to, is building trust in the community that you're going to work with and actually being committed to that community. I think Milt especially did a great job talking about how he has built trust in the Virgin Islands, but especially when you are working with people who are facing obstacles and you come in as the visible athlete and you come in with this savior mentality, if that trust is ever broken, it's done. Your nonprofit is done, it is over. And I've seen this happen with athletes. In 2014, I was involved with a nonprofit in Haiti started by a then NFL player. And if you pay attention to what happened to that nonprofit after it was started, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. They saved kids who were orphans. He's not involved anymore. And so he's burned the trust of an entire community, and you can't do that. That you lose your reputation, you can't come back from that. You can come back from a bad game. You can't come back from losing the trust of an entire community. So my keys of advice would be talk to a lawyer, make sure that your nonprofit is in compliance with state and federal laws. Make sure you're actually committed to this. This is a lot of work. It's a lifetime endeavor. And if you're not certain that whatever you're working towards is really your passion, your respective league has community relations opportunities in place. Go work there. Figure out what your passion is. There's less cost involved in that decision than starting your own thing.
And right now, is a challenging time for so many people, but especially in the nonprofit world. A lot of these organizations right now are on the verge of potentially going under or not having the resources to provide the growing need of the communities they serve because the needs are so great right now. How can foundations navigate the fine line between being direct about where, the financial needs that they have themselves to meet the need of their constituents, and also kind of seeming out of touch with people by asking for donations during a pandemic?
Right. So this goes to something I believe Eric talked about, is being adaptable and utilizing innovation. And also something Daniel spoke to, which is now's the time to tell the story. At this point in time, where we have more Americans out of work than we did in the Great Recession. If you pay attention to the markets, every day gets a little crazier and more worrisome than the next. But people are pinching their pennies. People are holding their money tight. And so you have to provide a compelling reason as to why they should dig into their pocket and provide to whatever your organization is. So it boils down first to storytelling. Hopefully before COVID, your organization did what I just explained in the last question, which is built trust in the community. Hopefully you've been building trust in the community and you've been actively involved there. Now comes the point where through digital storytelling, through ambassadors, your outward facing people who are widely visible, who have big followings, you utilize those tools to develop a compelling story about why your organization is critical for the time and history we're in. What in this moment is your organization uniquely positioned to solve, and why is your organization the best to do it? So those are two things. The third thing is see this as an opportunity. And I love the example Eric gave of like, hey, we were fundraising in ABC places. We were doing really well. This was going to be our best year yet. Then COVID hit, and it would have been very easy to go internal and say, well, the world is ending. We're screwed. We're in massive trouble. But he did what his mother did when she walked into that hospital bed. He said, I'm not going to allow negativity to surround me. I'm going to choose the positive outcome in this situation. And that's what we all have to do, whether we're a nonprofit, whether we're a college student, whether we're a job seeker, etc. We have to look for the positive in this situation. And the positive in this situation is our worlds are no longer limited to the face-to-face contacts we encounter on a daily basis. We are now officially thrust into this global world where asking for a Zoom meeting with somebody that you never met is not unheard of. Take advantage of that. How can you expand the reach of your nonprofit? How can you widen its mission and vision statement? Could you bring in new members of the board during this time? I honestly, this might sound a little crass, but if your organization doesn't come out of this better than it was before, you're not innovative and you're not creative and you don't have a positive mindset. There's more opportunity in this moment than we're in than there was on March 10th, 2020, if you have the right people surrounding you and the right attitude.
And going along with that, I mean, there are thousands of charities and organizations, not just started by athletes, but just in general that people can donate. And in terms of establishing kind of a social media footprint and a brand for a nonprofit, what are the best ways that people can differentiate themselves?
I'm a storyteller. So by trade, I've been a journalist for the last 10 years. I write screenplays. I dabble in fiction. I'm a storyteller. And if you look at the people who are successful on social media, it's the people who have a captivating narrative. And so with anybody I ever work with, the first question I ask them is, who are you? You know, like not who are you to the world? You know, to the world you're an NFL player, but who are you really? What are you afraid of? What gets you out of the bed on Tuesday morning when you're off of football? What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? What's the best thing that's ever happened to you? We are living in an age where the world craves vulnerability. The world wants people to speak about what they're really experiencing. It's time to take the armor off. It's time to share who you are. And so I think the real opportunity comes on social media if you can craft a consistent, understandable, engaging story. So every organization needs to ask, what is our why? And how do we take that why and turn it into content that is a clear, consistent story?
One of the other things, in addition to your work with foundations and as a professor, you were part of the Alliance of American Football, kind of built a first of its kind player career and education model. What were the key tenets of the program, and why did the AAF want to make that a point of emphasis in their launch? Obviously, the launch, unfortunately, was short-lived, but
yeah, that was a bad day. You want to talk about bad days in your career. One day you think you're building a football league, and the next day you get a text that football league's filing for bankruptcy. So I was hired by Troy Polamalu. So he was supposed to go into the Hall of Fame this year, but it looks like that'll be delayed, the safety from the Steelers. And if you look at Troy on the field, like Troy's one of the toughest safeties to ever play the game of football. The guy's a monster on the field. You get him off the field, he is one of the most kind-hearted, quiet guys you will meet. But you start talking to him, and he had a long career in a pretty tough position, and he attributes that to this model he built for his life, where he surrounded himself, similar to Tom Brady, but a little bit different, surrounded himself with the best nutritionists, the best spiritual guides, the best massage therapist. He eats an alkaline diet. And he said, Alicia, there's some massive problems in football. There are some massive problems with football related to patriarchy. There's a patriarchy in football where the leaders of the organization want to control every movement of the player. And what that results in is these men, when they finish their football careers, the only identity they've ever known is that of a football player. I had a man sit down with me when I was working for the Alliance. He graduated from a top university in this country. He was a captain at a school we've all heard of. He played 3 years in the NFL, and I'll never forget this. He sits down with me during our meeting, and he goes, Alicia, I'm scared. You can't see on the screen. I don't even think I'm 5'4". I'm a short, compact person. This is a 6'4" defensive lineman, and he's sitting down next to me, and he says, I'm scared. He said, what are you scared about? And he goes, nobody has ever told me what I'm capable of other than football. And obviously my football career is done because I'm playing in the Alliance, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so Troy and I, we had a vision that there would come a day that no other football player would say that. There would come a day where, to Cameron's point, football players would realize the voice they have, and they would feel empowered to utilize that voice, even if they're not performing. That they would feel empowered that just because you're a human and we live in the United States of America, you should be using your voice if you see something that's wrong. But the problem is right now the system isn't set up for that. So we were creating a holistic player transition program, building upon my work for the NBPA. So the year before, I was working with Antonio Davis to build a similar program with the NBPA called Off the Court. But it was going to look at player education, career, identity, psychology, a really, really, really first of its kind training and physical development system, a first of its kind nutrition program. We are basically going to take the wheels off of football as we know it and put them on in a way that puts player health, safety, and mental health first. So it's unfortunate that the league folded, but Troy and I have a few things in our back pocket, and hopefully someday our mission will come to life.
That's awesome. And thank you for being part of this panel. So that's all the questions for the panelists that I have. We'll allow some audience Q&A. If you guys want to type into the chat any questions you have, and please, when you ask a question, please identify yourself. So, you know, if I was asking a question, I'd say Daniel Marks, Milwaukee Bucks, and then ask the question. So just so we kind of have an idea of who's asking the question. So you guys can go ahead and do that, and I'll direct it to the panelist that I believe is most suited to answer, or if it's directed to one, just ask that person. So you guys can go ahead and do that, and we'll do that for a few minutes, and then we'll conclude the call. Anybody have any questions? All right, Milt, got one for you. from Aaron Proya. What were some of the most important things you learned on the job in a front office role?
Well, the most important thing is whatever sport it is, on a professional level, you're dealing with human beings. And one thing that I was told when I first started with the Wizards in regards to NBA teams, I've always been a straightforward type of person, very blunt at times. And I was told by one of my favorite players, matter of fact, I've mentioned Caron Butler. He's one of my favorites. And he says, Milt, as a manager, keep it real with your players. He said, don't lie to them, because as Alicia said, when you lose the trust of your players, then you really don't have anything. And so what I try to tell all the players that I'm involved with, I say, hey, look, I understand that, and you understand that this is a business. Just like there may be a time when I would have to trade you, I understand that there will be a time when you will say, you know what, this is best for my family. And so when I hear players say that, and I see some managers get upset, I say to myself, why are you getting upset? This is a business. Just like you would trade that player, just know that they want to put themselves in a better position for their families. And what I say to players is that I understand that. Just know that while you're here, I'm going to treat you like you're part of my family, and I'm going to treat your family like they're part of my family. And hopefully, when it comes to that point that you're thinking about leaving, you'll understand that what you have in our environment as opposed to going somewhere else. Now, don't get it twisted. I understand I can be your family, and you could be somewhere else making $5 or $10 more million. If you stay for the family, then I might start thinking you're crazy. But at the end of the day, I am very upfront with players, and I try to share with players as much as I can to know that I may have to give you hard news, but at least when you walk away from the conversation, you will say, it's not what I wanted to hear, but at least I know it's the truth. Now I can plan accordingly. And that's something I try to live by.
Thanks, Milt. This is a question from Dan Lively. And I'll tailor this to Milt and to Daniel and Eric. What are the best ways to get involved with your foundations right now during the pandemic when people are at home and looking to help and have time on their hands? So what would be the best ways that people, and I'll put in the chat the websites for each of you guys and your organization so that people can check them out, but how can people get involved? Start with you, Milt.
It's interesting for that question, because I was thinking about what Alicia said about being adaptable and changing with the times. One of the things that our foundation, we have 3 board members, myself, my wife, and one of my mentors, a guy named Eddie Tapscott, who has basically done every job in the NBA. He started the Charlotte Bobcats, who are now back to the Charlotte Hornets, was assistant GM with the Knicks, has a law degree, was a college coach, was an agent. He has done like almost every job. And so we have a very small board, but what we're trying to figure out right now is how we can still be involved with our youth outside of not being able to go there. And what we have told people in the past is, like, if you go to our website and see what we're about, I have a handful of friends that have really poured into our foundation financially and other ways. And so for us, we're trying to find out ways as well how we can branch off. Now, the one thing that we talked about when we started the foundation is not to go too fast and get ahead of ourselves. Initially, I was asked to be joined by a major corporation, but when we really started diving into what they wanted to do and being involved with us, it wasn't the right fit. And so we backed out of that. And so as we continue to grow the foundation forward, we're definitely looking at different ways that we can impact outside of sports in terms of providing new and innovative ways to impress upon these youth that, like, there's a lot more that you can do. You're equipped to do more than you think you are. And so those are definitely things that we're looking to improve on.
Yeah, and for my foundation, Team LeGrand, I would say go to our website, teamlegrand.org. When I created this foundation, I realized that spinal cord injuries don't discriminate. It can happen to any person at any given time, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it made me realize, not everyone is an athlete. So how do I venture out and start, things that people, may not always be interested in, like just a football event or a walk. So I created having a 5K walk, which, like I said, was our 10th annual one. But I also did a Zumba event. We've had 2 Zumba events. Flag football tournament. Had that for 2 years. This year we had to cancel it because of COVID. Have an evening with Eric LeGrand, which is just a cocktail hour, and some raffle items. We've done a kickboxing, KO kickboxing, cornhole, and I haven't even announced this yet. I got a call with the people on Monday. But I'll let you guys know. We're putting together a yoga event. So I branched out of things that how to get everyone involved in things that they like. It may not just be football. It may not be running 5Ks. People might like yoga. People might like cornhole. All different things to bring the community together. And ChristopherReeve.org, they have all the different events, golf outings and things like that, that they're putting together. So if you guys want to get involved in my foundation, just check out the website and see what we have coming out. If you want to make donations, and just let you make a difference.
Organizations like streets and protests, they're still going on everywhere. You just find ways to get involved, and that's the best thing you can do. Alicia said, if your organization is not innovating during COVID, you're doing it wrong. So I'm sitting here like, dang, our big showcase is canceled this year. We had 300 kids come. We had to cancel it, and I'm sitting here bummed out. I got to find a way to pivot.
You need to call Eric. He'll tell you what to do.
Yes. I might need your consultation, Eric, because we got to pivot. We were bummed that our showcase got canceled. So I got my office. I got boxes with 300 jerseys just sitting there trying to figure out what to do next. So.
Raffle.
Oh, geez. I understand, man. I do understand.
So this question from Ahil Shir Muhammad for Eric. There has been an ongoing conversation the past couple of years highlighting mental health and the importance of it. You have persevered through some tough challenges. So what advice do you have for the younger generation of athletes that also face difficult challenges in life coming from various backgrounds? How do you keep that mental toughness and composure while being true to yourself and always keeping that smile?
People always say you hear mental toughness, this and that, and people think it's easy. It's not. The biggest thing I try to tell people, what I learned is, you got to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You're going to have to deal with tough situations in your life. You're going to have to deal with adversity that's thrown your way, something that you weren't expected. But it's how you handle it what ultimately defines your character. Do you run away? Do you curl up in a ball? Do you sit in the corner all upset about it? Or do you find, as we've been saying, you find a way to pivot and get through that adversity, whether that's leaning on somebody for help, whether if that's, going to a mentor, go to a coach, whatever it is. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable in tough situations if you need that help. And that's how you learn to be able to build that. So, being an athlete, we always were put in tough situations. So that's how it was able to help me because, you're going through practice, a 2.5 hour practice, and you got to do 20 sprints. And then next thing you know, coach just tell you to put your face in the ground and stuff like that. I'm just like, what am I doing? But you have no idea what is setting you up mentally. Waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning for some conditioning. Things where you get out of bed, you're like, what's going on? But then when real life hits you, it sets you up for those things. So learn how to challenge yourself. Do things that you don't want to do. If you get up every morning, you don't want to make your bed. Try to do it for 5 days and watch what happens. We're human. Trained behavior becomes an instinct. And if you start doing things that you don't want to do that get you all upset, I don't feel like doing this, start trying one thing at a time and watch what happens with your mentality. it changes everything.
Now, I'm going to combine two questions that I think are really good from Mike Pudlow and Anish Namburi. This is for Cam and Alicia. Cam, do you feel that the current agency model prepared you for off-field success? And, as a part of that, how do you, for Cam and Alicia, how do you guys think that the recent progress that's been made in promoting financial literacy and educational resources for current and former athletes, what are the next steps that can be taken in those areas?
Alicia, I will pass the mic to you first. Ladies first, as usual.
Oh boy. Okay. So let's talk about the representation one first. Mike, it says that you're an attorney in the chat. I think where a lot of attorneys get into wishy-washy ground with representation is there's different and oftentimes higher moral, ethical standards for attorneys than there are for agents. And so you need to be really clear, like what hat you're wearing when and what standard of ethics you're upholding. In terms of working with athletes versus non-athletes, athletes are people too. I think when you spend a lot of time with athletes, you're like, yeah, you're just another person like I am. And I think that's the best advice I could give anybody is treat them like you would treat anybody else. And I think that's how you build trust with people is you're not talking to them because they're an athlete. Like you recognize like they're great at whatever they're great at, but you are there because you're great at what you do. You're a great lawyer. And so I think if you just treat people the way you'd like to be treated, that would help with that. I think the hardest thing for lawyers in this space is finding clients. And everything comes down to trust and having a platform. I didn't know anybody who worked in sports before I started my sports law blog 9 years ago this month. And so I had to build credibility. I had to build a following. And it's taken time, but the opportunities that have come have been shocking, like on a daily basis. So figure out how to build credibility and to begin building those relationships related to the financial management one. Do you want me to answer that now? Or do you want to pivot over to Cameron?
We can pivot over to Cam.
Okay, I can answer the agent piece first, Alicia, then we'll throw it back to you. You know what I mean? Little pass and go. So in regards to the agent, wow, right? I'll say wow again, right? Because so Whitney Holtzman, like I said, is on this chat. I love giving her love. Shout out to Betting on Women when it comes to agents, right? Alicia, I do believe that in business, women get it done. At the end of the day, Whitney has allowed more opportunities for me off the field than any agent that I've had. On the field, the agent that I had, I was able to play for the Buccaneers for 3 years and Rams and go back and forth based off of his experiences and who he knows. But to be honest, when it comes to agents, I think so this is my route. I'm just going to let you know my route. So other people's routes will be different, but for the agents in this chat, just know that making sure that the player has their cut field off the court or off the field is the most important thing you can do. Mr. Milt, I heard a podcast from Steve Kerr and Eric Dungy, Tony Dungy's son. And Steve Kerr said Steph Curry the day before will go play a round of golf and then go score 50 the next day. You know what I mean? I'm sure Michael Jordan did the same thing where he would do what he wanted the day before and go score some points. So I think whatever that is, if they love golf, help them figure out what they want to do in regards to golf off the field, whether they want to build a foundation, whether they want to start a media company. I mean, figure out what they want to do off the field. So when it comes to the field, they get it's second nature because everything that they wanted to do has already been taken care of. And that's something that Whitney has done for me is my wildest dreams off the field. And I'm going to jump to a real quick question about kind of the stuff that I did. Nate Wise, I think, asked the most meaningful way that I gave back. And that was through Whitney. I mean, that was through a person that wasn't my actual football agent, but she was an agent for change. She was an agent for stuff off the field. So I think that's the best advice and think about it now, right? If you're an agent now and you have an NFL or NBA athlete, we don't know if there's going to be a season. But what we do know is they'll be off the court. They will be with their families. So figure out how you can feel and pour into their cup off the field and off the court because they will be way better off. So, I'm not going to shame an agent or X, Y, and Z. I'm just going to say what we can do if you are an agent, and what players appreciate, and just fill our cups off the court and off the field, because we'll be much better on it.
I want to piggyback on that real quick, which I think is really important. So for The Athletic, I cover sports business, so I talk to agents a lot. And when the NBA stopped, this is already off to a good start. I'll get back to you on the name of the agency, but one of the big NBA agencies called me, and they did what Cameron is discussing and what I mentioned before, is if you pivot, you're going to achieve more during this period than you would have had life continued as normal. They realized that the world was shutting down and we were all going on lockdown, but they knew their clients and they knew what their clients were interested in. And they knew that there was a trend where the days have changed in the NBA. Guys aren't going out and partying anymore when they're on the road. They're going into their hotel rooms and they're gaming. And so this agency pivoted super quick. They got all of their guys these gaming sponsorship deals, where now these guys are getting paid. They're getting paid massive amounts of money to stream. And these deals wouldn't have happened then, but for COVID. So these guys are still getting their NBA salaries, and now they're getting money on top of it simply because their agent knows who they are as a person and sees opportunities out there. So I guess my and Cameron's like tag team advice is get to know people, like ask who they are, and get to know your community. There's also an NFL player. He's retired. You'd never heard of him. He played for the Vikings, but he was on an NFL team. And what he did when he got to Minneapolis is he walked around the entire Minneapolis neighborhood and knock, 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 go into the office. Hi, I'm Jack Brewer. I'm a Minneapolis Viking. Everybody wants to meet an athlete. So every door in that city came open to him. He built this massive network where now he is even more successful in business than he was in football. That guy, if you need to get a hold of someone, you call Jack. Jack opens the door. So how can you either be Jack, or how can you be the agent who's looking 10 steps ahead and be like, okay, the world's changing. This is where we need to pivot to. A lot of that also boils down to reading. I tell my students, I listened to a podcast with Mark Cuban, who seems like a pretty busy guy, but Mark Cuban said he reads 4 hours a day. And to know how to pivot, to know where the world's going, you can't just live in a hole. You've got to read, and you have to see the trends, you have to see the opportunities, and know when it's time to hit the gas and go.
Thanks. And this will be the last question. Someone asked for Milt and I. Let's see who it was here. Can't find the name right now. But basically, when did you decide to get involved and start your community initiative? So I'll start with myself, and then I'll hand it over to you, Milt. So for me, this idea of collecting unused toiletries, like I said, I saw a tweet about it a number of years ago, and kind of thought, oh, this is a cool idea, but never acted on it. And then for whatever reason, this past December, January, I decided to act on it and went ahead with, starting it myself and then branching out to people within the Bucks organization and other NBA organizations. And I think from a timing standpoint for me, this is my 7th year working in the NBA, and I love my job, and I've had a lot of tremendous experiences as a result of what I've been able to do for a living. But there was that part of me that was like, okay, I'm getting to do all these things, but am I impacting the lives of others? Like, how am I helping people? And this, for me, was a way to help kind of fulfill it. Cam mentioned, fill your cup off the field. Like, this was a way of doing that for me away from the job, because I think you can get caught up in, the wins and the losses, and, oh, maybe I should watch another game of film tonight, or maybe I should make that extra background call. And it can be easy in this business to lose perspective because it is kind of a 24/7, you're always on call business. So for me, it was kind of a way to reset a little bit and help, balance my life out in some ways. So that's why I decided to do it at this point in my career. And then I'll let Milt kind of close us out with his answer.
Well, it's really interesting how I was brought up. My mindset was always to give back. whether it's giving back to my community or whether it's giving back to someone that wants to do what I do, or whether it's someone that looks like me. And so I'm that guy that, say, an intern or someone looking for an internship would call. And I've had this happen to me where you send your information in, your resume or whatever, and you get the form letter back. If something comes up, we'll contact you. Well, I know where those letters usually go, like in a file cabinet, never to be seen again. And so when someone would call me or text me, I would try to give them a call back and kind of give them my journey, how I got into professional sports. So I've always done that. But as I mentioned, 6 years ago, when the playground that I grew up on was renamed after me, it kind of accelerated my desire to give back to my community. And so when that happened, I got with my wife and I said, you know what? We were trying to figure out when we're going to start the foundation. I think that kind of accelerated it a little bit. And, Alicia was talking about doing it the right way, making sure it's legal. Before I started with the foundation, I said, you know what, we want to help people. It shouldn't cost us money to try to help people. Starting a foundation costs money. It costs money to start a foundation. It was like, it blew my mind how much it costed, but we had someone to do pro bono. A good friend of mine has done pro bono work for us, but that was the start for us with our foundation. But prior to that, I'd like to say that I always had a foundation, a nonprofit foundation type of mentality in terms of giving back and helping others try to achieve the dreams that they have, because I know along the way I've been helped. And as I mentioned, the people, the couple that I call my mom and my dad, who pretty much took me in at the age of 14, that's what they instilled in me, giving back to those that are less fortunate, or giving back to those that are trying to run or go the same path that you're on. And so to me, it's natural for me to try to help out someone who is trying to get information to achieve their goal.
All right. Well, everyone, I want to thank you guys for being a part of this. To Dawn, Milt, Eric, Cam, Alicia, and Dan, thank you guys for being on the panel. I just put into the chat the websites for all of the different people that have spoken on the panel tonight for their foundations and organizations. And if anyone on the chat, this is something I'll probably look to do maybe bi-weekly, discussing different things in the sports world, because I think, like Alicia said, now, and Cam has alluded to, now is a time to have conversations on different things, because if, everyone's sitting around for the most part. I think some states have opened back up and now they're closing because the cases are going up and there's a lot of uncertainty. So if you guys want to be involved in these conversations, put your email in the chat and I'll take those down. And then thanks again, everyone, for being on here.
Thanks for having us, D. Marks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on here, guys.
Thank you. Awesome.
I'm just going to stick around to get everyone's emails. That's putting them in, but the panelists, you guys can feel free to head out.
Thanks, Danny. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Wow.